everyone. Thank you for joining us here in the Master Plan Hub. So we are going to be providing for you here today just a brief overview of the Master Plan directions, the key directions of the Master Plan. And I guess this is just a precursor for if you're going on a site tour, or if you've been on a site tour, either as a precursor to that or just a bit of a recap. So hope you get something out of it. So look, what we're really wanting to do is to begin with sort of establishing, I guess, one of the key drivers behind the Master Plan, and that's the very rich cultural and natural history of the Glenthorne, both the Glenthorne property but also the wider precinct. So the property itself has a huge and rich history which needs to be celebrated, and there's a fantastic opportunity here to look at celebrating then what the future is going to bring for the National Park. So the key driver really behind the vision is all about establishing a place for people to reconnect with nature. So that's a fundamental premise behind the Master Plan, and that's driven by I guess looking back to pre-colonial times in terms of the site's natural history, then looking at how the site has developed over the years through use for farming practices, but then also by the military, by research and research organisations such as CSIRO, and most recently the University of Adelaide, and now we're at a point where it's being handed back to the community. So we've got a fantastic opportunity here to now rebuild effectively a place where people can connect with nature, and that's going to be done through a lot of vegetation restoration, walking trails and so forth. So I'm going to take you through that. The guiding principles behind the Master Plan are driven very much under three key themes. So biodiversity and conservation being one, recreation and lifestyle, so allowing people to get to the site and recreate, and also heritage and education. So acknowledging that certainly within the southern area of Adelaide, there are a lot of opportunities to connect with existing organisations and to be able to build on the educational connections that this precinct can bring to educate people around nature and conservation. So I guess some of the key drivers, these have driven the Master Plan directions. We've got an overall Master Plan vision which looks at establishing a mosaic of open space parcels across the precinct. So we've got 5 key parcels of land: Merino Conservation Park, Hallett Cove Conservation Park, O'Halloran Hill Recreation Park just across the road, Happy Valley Reservoir, and the property itself, obviously where we are at the moment. So these are all integral parts of the Master Plan. Well, what's important to understand is that there's a lot of other open space areas that will provide connections between those parcels of land that will all help to form part of this greater improved environment and biodiversity precinct. So it's important that there's a management plan that's put in place to deliver that, and that'll be working very strongly with the government, councils, so the City of Conybeare and the City of Marion, but also looking at improving connections with the community and sort of establishing very strong connections with community groups and organisations, the Ghana community as well, who are obviously been very integral in the development of this Master Plan. So one of the key strategies that we have is then looking at how we can actually create these trail links from using Glenthorne, the property itself, as a hub for education, a hub for people to connect, and I guess as a key point of access to the park, but then how they can then connect around to the other parcels of land. So some potentials for themed trails that either provide you with a botanic walking experience, a heritage experience, more recreation-based activities around cycling, particularly when we're talking O'Halloran Hill Conservation Park, Recreation Park rather, but then also connections to other important parcels of open space that lie outside the main national park, such as a Sturt Gorge Recreation Park, and connections to the Warraparinga, and again reinforcing those Indigenous cultural connections. The Glenthorne property itself has 6 key elements in terms of the Master Plan. So The first is the establishment of a main Glenthorne hub, which will be a visitor information and entry precinct, which is located just down the hill behind us here. That will be basically your first point of access into the Glenthorne property. So access will be off using the existing drive off Majors Road. It'll be a one-way access down into the precinct, where there'll be a new visitor information centre that'll be established, which will be available both for information about the park, the greater park, but also to look at opportunities for spaces for the community to use for various purposes. So beyond that, looking at nature play and recreation precinct to the south, so that'll be just to the south of that area. There's also a huge amount of potential for heritage interpretation, and that's both pre-colonial and post-colonial, so there's a fantastic opportunity for that. And then also the re-establishment of the dam, which is located in the heart of the site, so turning that, basically revitalising that into a wetland environment, and also then having opportunities for camping and creek rehabilitation, which is further down to the southern portion of the site. Now the camping will be a structured camping activity. It won't be open just for everyday public use. It'll be used for community organisations and so forth to be able to have organised events, whether it's scouts or youth development or health and wellbeing organisations that can have organised camping experiences on the site. There's also an extensive trail network that's proposed with an emphasis on universal access, and there's a broad overarching revegetation strategy to look at returning much of the site to the pre-colonial times, so looking at grassy woodland, establishment of the grey box grassy woodland vegetation structure, and some creek rehabilitation works as well. So we've got a few photographs here that show existing parts of the site, and then I guess the vision that sits behind it. So this is a photograph down of the main Glenthorne hub, how it currently looks, and apologies, it is a little bit light in here. So, but for those who are going on the walk, you'll be seeing a view almost identical to this. And then the vision, which shows the establishment of this main entry precinct. So a visitor information centre shown on the right there. The restoration and adaptive reuse of some of the buildings that are of heritage value to the precinct, and that includes even some of the shearing sheds, so which talks again a lot about the farming history and other parts of the history of the site. This will all be centred around a village green, so the idea of creating this nice green open space that is a place for people to come to as a destination point and a first point of contact with the park. I mentioned earlier the heritage. It's an overriding theme behind the entire master plan, so there are numerous sites that provide opportunities for interpretation. So the munition stores up on the hillside here with beautiful views out over the southern ranges and the southern vales is a fantastic opportunity to restore these, and in combination with a restoration of the landscape, a natural landscape, the grey box grassy woodland environment, creating quite a beautiful environment for people to get to look at those long-ranging views, and also to be able to learn a lot about the history of the site. In this particular case, looking at the munition stores and the military history around the precinct. There's also an opportunity for us to look at web-based applications and digital technologies such as augmented reality, which provide even a deeper level of information that people can access through their devices. The nature play and pond precinct, so there's quite a lot of work that the Friends of Glenthorne have been doing down around the pond in particular in terms of revegetation. The master plan builds on that work that they've begun, and looking at the creek corridor as being this real opportunity to bring people back to nature and start a revegetation strategy that starts with the creek. So allowing people to access the creek, having nature play that's integral to that, looking at some themed opportunities for nature play there that draw again on the Indigenous cultural history, but also of the colonial history of the site, and really building a fantastic opportunity for children and people of multi-generational play opportunity in that part of the site. And that's in addition to a lot of picnic facilities which are also will be made available in that area, so allowing people to have day-long stays where they can come to the park and use that as a home base for going out on their particular walks to various parts of the site. And this is a vision of that. So looking at the wetlands precinct, so this is a photo of the existing dam. The proposal is to do some extensive restoration of that dam into a rich, biodiverse, natural wetland environment, bringing back a lot of bird life to the park. This will be a core part of the, again, revegetation work around the precinct, but also providing people with the opportunity through getting out on boardwalks, bird hides, opportunities for people to, again, connect both with nature but also with the water, and another aspect of the park. Interpretation I've talked to. This is an interpretation node which sort of looks a little bit further up the bank, looking back over the wetland towards the munition stores, and again the visualisation of how we see that in the future. So again, the creation of these nodes along walking trails where people can stop, have a bite to eat, read something about the history of the site, whether it be through signage on the ground or again through web-based information. So, and again, looking through a restored landscape environment to those significant parts of the site's heritage, like the munition stores. Further down the site, as I mentioned, the creek restoration and camping area. So this is a photograph of the existing part of that site, and the proposal, which looks to again draw people to the space to have managed camping in that area, where people who are sometimes first-time users or first-time campers rather, have an opportunity to be able to do that activity and experience what it's like to be in nature. Again, linking back to walking trails and education around conservation values. So the trail network here is illustrated. So we have a number of trails, as you can see from that diagram, located throughout the site. The key connecting trail will run pretty much right along the creek corridor. Again, the idea of universal access, providing a safe, equitable environment for all users, all age groups, to be able to use that shared use trail that runs along the creek, with then a broader network of trails that extend up to hillsides, where you've got beautiful views again that take advantage of those views out over the hills. So a real variety of experiences we're talking about with the trail network, and there's been some extensive work done on that, and a lot more work to do in terms of realising that, but a real emphasis on that universal access. And lastly, again, a very important part of this project is about the revegetation strategy, and there's a whole separate body of work that's happening alongside the master planning, which is looking at how revegetation will be undertaken across the site. It will take many years to establish a good grassy woodland environment that we're proposing, and there are also some opportunities here to build on, again, the creek rehabilitation work, look at riparian restoration in the creek, and again looking at traditional land uses, indigenous traditional land uses of productive grasslands. So looking at the Themata kangaroo grasslands, and how we might reinstate some of that, and again use that as an interpretive tool, but also actually as a working thing to see how we can actually get Indigenous engagement back on the site, and talk about the use of vegetation for productive use. So that's really all I was going to talk to at this point in time. I'm very keen to open it up for questions.